Good morning and welcome to the PT on Ice Daily Show. Today I am going to be your host. My name is Dr. Sarah Herron and I am the owner of Aero Physical Therapy in Seattle, Washington. I'm repping our new trucker hat gear and I'm also the lead faculty for the Out of Network Division for the Institute of Clinical Excellence. So thanks for joining us this morning. I do want to highlight that we have lots of courses coming up, and the best way to stay on top of all of that is to visit our website. That's ptonice.com. And at the very bottom of that website, I want you guys to click on the link that says Hump Day Hustling, and I want you to sign up for our email. It's not spam. It's literature usually, cool Instagram posts, great exercise ideas, things that we as a faculty think is really useful to you. So 5 things every Wednesday in one condensed email that hopefully will be useful to your practice and to your patients. So I do want to highlight, however, that the next cohort of the Out of Network class, so this is Out of Network Step by Step, starts in July. It begins on July 29th, and there are a few spots left. So if you'd like to join us, if you're interested in cash practice, if you have an inkling that you might want to start your own business, or maybe you already have and you're looking for a network of people who are going through the same stuff, or you want to make sure you did everything right, it's a great opportunity for that. So please sign up for that course before it fills up. Again, that's July 29th, and I will be leading you through that journey. So today what I want to talk about is women in physical therapy and in private practice or in small business or in physical therapy practice. Okay, so all of these little niche ideas here. And I want to start by reminding this audience that this is a topic that's relevant to us all. So before you tune me out, maybe you don't think this is relevant to you, I urge you to hear the rest of this discussion. I want to start by relating the history of women in physical therapy. And as many of us knew or learned in physical therapy school, that this profession is sort of, it came from women. It was developed by women. So during World War I, women were recruited to work with and restore function to injured soldiers. And in fact, that's sort of where the field of physical therapy was institutionalized. Of course, we can look back into our civilization and history and see where physical therapy has been a part of our culture. Right, and like working with individuals to restore function or gain strength or rehab from injury, all of these things have existed across the span of time, but where physical therapy really got a name was during this time. And in 1921, the American Women's Physical Therapeutic Association was formed. It was a female field, and then a year later the name was changed to the American Physiotherapy Association. It has now since changed to physical therapy, and that's when men were added, so in 1922, so a year later. So I really think that's really interesting, and I think it is really exciting to reflect back on. However, it is now 2019 and we're still having this conversation. So a century later, yes, a century later, kind of crazy to think about that. We are still thinking about where do women fall in this field? And I think that, of course, is not unique to physical therapy. It is something that actually socially is gaining more and more traction in recent years, and that's a really good thing. We are shedding light as a community on where we're not up to speed in terms of our thinking here. And what I mean by that is culturally, women are being left behind. Of course, there are other minorities who are being left behind as well, and that's a topic for another day. Excuse me, but there will be a lot of parallels and a lot of similarities here. Today, we're going to talk about women because I am a woman. That is the only minority that I can relate with, and so that is where I want to speak toward. But certainly, this is a topic that needs to be brought to light. So I do think, and I got some great feedback from people, both in the ice community and in my gym community, my CrossFit gym that I coach at, and in the physical therapy world in general. And a lot of folks noted to me that there are some really great personality traits of physical therapists. Now, we might tend to think that women cultivate these personality traits better or more frequently or more easily. I can only speak for myself as I am a woman, but I do see this in men as well. And I think that these are traits of great physical therapists. So we're looking at empathetic folks. We're looking at the nurturing, the self-sacrificing. Okay, all of these things make for a great physical therapist when it comes to connecting with patients. And that is by and large, one of the most important aspects of good physical therapy, right? We can have all of these skills, we can read all of the latest research, we can be up to date, but if you don't connect, then you lose the opportunity to make a difference in that person's life. So let me say that again. You can be really, really skilled and you can know all the latest stuff and have all the best information for this patient and know exactly what you need to do for them. And if you don't connect with them, you have lost the opportunity to relay all that information. Okay. And so obviously I know several physical therapists who are male and who are wonderful at doing this. But I do think that these characteristics of being self-sacrificing and nurturing and empathetic can come more naturally for women. And so perhaps that is where we see that our profession is female dominated. So we see about 60% of our profession is female. This is based on data that I found from 2015. So um, I'm I don't know where we're at now. We can dig into that more. But so it's a bit skewed. And many of us when we went to PT school, we saw that. It's a bit skewed toward females. So it is interesting that on average, women physical therapists are earning about 10K less per year. If the average salary, again, this is data that is APTA data that was dated in around 2015, stated that the average salary is about 75 grand. And so female physical therapists are earning about 10 grand less than that. So that's something to be noted. And that is certainly not unique to physical therapy, but it is something that we need to be aware of. And as I've become a part of ICE and I've been surrounded by people who are sort of, pushing the envelope and promoting what we call physical therapist version 2.0, I don't see this as regularly, right? Because I'm seeing these awesome, like really powerful women in leadership roles, but we forget what's actually happening in our profession. So as mentors and as leaders, we need to continue to raise the bar of expectation of how we are going to treat each other, right? And how we're going to raise those women up and other minorities if that is something that you can affect. So I can be somebody who can affect women because that is my minority. However, I can be aware that there's other problems to be aware of, right? And so I want to talk a little bit about something I saw recently on social media. My friend Ellie Summers, who, if you've taken my out-of-network class, we talk a lot about her practice. She is a physical therapist in Seattle. And she is very good at highlighting where women have sort of been lost in the shuffle. She talks a lot about girls dropping out of sports at a young age, and she talks a lot about these discrepancies in business. So one of the things that she and I have talked about is women in business. And so this is something that we talk about in the course. But recently on her Instagram page, she talked a lot about social media and how she's very intentional about who she chooses to follow. So I found as I was prepping for this talk, like there's so many directions that we can take this. And I know that I'm probably going to spend, 15 more minutes talking to you guys about all these little nuanced things. But a big, big takeaway is that idea that we can choose who we follow, and we tend to choose to follow people who are like us. So it is very common in, let's say, a boardroom, a big company, that you're going to see white males promoting other white males because they see similarities, and we can model behavior after people who we look like and feel like and resonate with, right? So if there are not many female leaders in your life or minority leaders who are starting their own businesses or going to graduate school or you know, whatever it is that you're looking at, then you're less likely to model after that behavior. It's not that it can't be done. Of course it can be, but it's something that we need to be recognizing. And so it would behoove all of us to do a better job of following people on social media who aren't like us, who help cultivate a little bit more of a well-rounded understanding of how we take care of our patients and what our patients' needs are and where do they fit into the biopsychosocial model and which sphere does that patient sort of resonate most with. And we may not see that. And I'm guilty of this. I follow a lot of female CrossFit physical therapists, right? Because that's my culture and that's what I know. So that's an aside, and I think we can all challenge ourselves to do a better job of that. Um, my other big takeaways that I want to address here are that I think the biggest thing with social media is just that idea of being perfect. And I sort of rapped on this the other day in my car because I was having like a personal struggle that day. And I got a lot of feedback about that because people were like, "Oh my God, thank you for being so vulnerable and talking about that because we don't talk about it." Um, in fact, one of the members at my gym she direct messaged me and she said, "Sarah, I'm so glad you said this. You're inspirational. Like you're somebody that people compare themselves to. So don't forget that." And I was like, "I know, I do know that." And she said, "Well, don't compare your insides to someone else's outsides." And I thought, oh my gosh, that just brought up so much for me that is women for me. So for me, I'm talking about my perspective. I do not want to put words in anybody else's mouth. I know that this can be a little bit of a fiery subject for people. And as you know, I kind of like to shake it up a little bit. So I got a lot of good questions on Instagram and I do want to address those, but I want to talk first about sort of my perspective as a woman in physical therapy and as a business owner. And to give you guys an insight, if you don't know, I own a cash practice in Seattle, Washington, and we've been open for 3 years. So I started this cash practice a little bit before it was more commonplace. So I dealt with a lot of pushback from my community. I also coach CrossFit, and so my niche population is CrossFitters, and then we have a couple other specialties, but I'm just going to talk about that. So, and then I employ Dr. Beth Amsley, who's also a woman, and we have a very strong, as Zach Long would say, avatar at our clinic for the female fitness athlete, essentially. Okay, and so we target them on social media, right? Um, does that mean that we're not serving other populations? Maybe, right? And so that's something for us to be aware of. But how how I have felt over the last 3 years is something that I feel as a mentor now is really important for me to share because no one has shared this with me. And I have been in the dark sort of wondering like, is everyone else doing great? They're like just doing fine, not not having any of these self-confidence issues. So from the age of a small child, I have struggled with self-confidence and I've talked about that before. And I struggled with eating disorders and I was a ballerina and there's a lot of that tied into my anxiety and my sort of self-worth assessment. I'm working on that. Counseling super helpful. Opening a business is super helpful. But I do think that there is a tendency for women, oops, my computer. There's a tendency for women to think that they need to be quiet And that is a social norm. And like it or not, it is pervasive. So it's something to be aware of. It's something to start to reflect on. It's something to fight against. And I, it's funny, I even just now said, oh, I like to shake things up. Well, am I shaking things up? Like, I'm just having a conversation about this, but yet I have this lack of confidence that it's okay to talk about these things because I might ruffle feathers. And that's where I think that my perspective as a woman is different than that of a man. I can't speak for all men, but as a trend, and we see this in lots of different ways in our world, it's something to think about. So I'm often faced with, am I a good enough fill in the blank to be a business owner in this setting? So am I a good enough weightlifter, CrossFitter, physical therapist, business owner to be treating these patients, taking money from them, coaching them, right? So my best friend, who is one of the CrossFit coaches at the gym I'm at, noted to me, and she's been coaching a little bit longer than me. So I think she's been coaching for 7 years. And she said that as a female CrossFit coach, her biggest sort of self-esteem issue was in coaching men to kind of bring it down a notch, like take weight off their bar, or your form doesn't look good, or I want you to scale this movement because I want you to work on this. Because in some instances, she wasn't able to do that movement. So let's say that she's coaching somebody who's linking tons of ring muscle ups, and she's like, I know how to coach you. I can't physically do that, but I'm going to tell you, some cues for how to do it, or get off of the rings or take weight off of your bar, and kind of being fearful of that pushback. And so then what happens when we're fearful of pushback is we don't actually give what we need to give to those patients or athletes, right? Because we are worried that because we're not good enough, like they're better than us. Well, we all know, like, you don't have to be good at something to be able to teach it or coach it or treat it. Okay. So again, it's this good enough issue. And I will tell you this, I have never heard a male CrossFit coach tell me that. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I'm just saying I've never heard that. And I asked plenty of men in my survey. So the other thing, and I kind of touched on this earlier, is that for me, most of my previous bosses have been male. And though I respect them a lot, and I looked up to them in many ways, I never viewed myself that way. And perhaps that's because I didn't have anybody to model that behavior that looked like me or felt like me. Additionally, I did experience some sexual harassment in the workplace that was mild enough that I didn't do anything about it. And I thought, like, ooh, maybe I shouldn't have worn this, or like I should stop wearing lipstick. You all know I like to wear lipstick. Now, sometimes I wear a hat, but like that's okay. That's who I am. That doesn't mean that I need to be treated a certain way. And so that was hard for me and took a long time for me to realize, no, that is not fucking okay. So I think we've all probably experienced some of that and not been able to like label it. So I do think, again, in this role of mentorship, and as I am talking to lots of women who are wanting to start their own business, it's okay to feel these things, and it's definitely okay to be vulnerable about it, and to educate each other that, like, no, this is normal, and to educate men that maybe they feel that and maybe they don't, but we all need to be aware of it and boost each other up and help that become not the norm anymore. Okay, so again, my goal is just to change that. And so that's why I wanted to talk about this today, and I want to address these questions that people ask me because they're really, really interesting and really important. So if you have more topics that you want to talk about, go ahead and make some comments on the Facebook page, because I will definitely get back to you, and I think we should continue this discussion. I would love to hear what male business owners have to say about like what they feel. So any cash practice owners out there, especially, I want to hear from you. Okay, so the first thing that came up was how do you find your voice as a business owner? So the biggest thing for me is to be authentic. So, and that can be a real challenge because in my authenticity, I am now vulnerable and I'm showing you my true self, and that may or may not be good enough, right? But I resonate with a lot of people who maybe I wouldn't otherwise have affected had I not been vulnerable. So I think being authentic, being your true self, wear lipstick if you want to wear lipstick, pull your hair up if you want to pull it. It doesn't matter what you look like, but as women, we were raised to really think that that was like really important, and I certainly I'll say that I was, and so that's part of who I am. That's okay. That doesn't mean that I can't do that and be smart and be a business owner and help other people learn, but I want to be authentic about that. And I also want to be authentic in my practice, right? So I practice maybe a little bit differently than somebody else, and that's okay because that's what works for my people. And Jeff Moore talked about this the other day, like doing what's right for your people because you have these true fans. That's okay. I don't have to make everybody happy. I have a successful business that's working great. Okay. The other thing that came up regarding business ownership is having an employee mindset versus having a business owner mindset. And this is really interesting because it feels selfish. So the biggest thing for me as a business owner is that it feels selfish when I say like need to block time to do admin stuff. And I'm like, I can't see you during that time. And so what do? I open my schedule and I make myself crazy because I never have time to do the things that I need to do or want to do for that matter because I'm making other people happy. Now, is that unique to women? I think probably. I think it is probably more prevalent. Certainly prevalent for me. That is my personality type, but is it heightened because I'm a woman? I think so. Food for thought. Okay, managing interactions and getting buy-in in a male-dominated CrossFit space. So again, talking about my friend Erin, that's a challenge, right? And so it really does help, and we talk about this a lot in the course, it does help to be an active participant in that community. That doesn't mean you have to be the top athlete. You just need to show up, work hard, uh, be a integral part of that community and have a lot of integrity. So when I journal on our app, like what I did, I say exactly what I did in terms of scaling or not scaling so that people know like, oh yeah, Sarah is having some back pain. I noticed that she did this. Because you know what? I tell my patients to do that. So that's important, right? Well, so for getting buy-in from men, it's really important that I like have the confidence that what I'm doing and how I'm coaching them is correct and right and to benefit them, right? And that just takes practice. So almost all of this stuff, this self-talk stuff, just takes practice. And the best piece of advice that I can give you is to find evidence in your life, in conversations. Look around you. Look, I mean, here I'm sitting in this clinic that I built. That's evidence that I can do it and that it works, right? Stop looking for evidence that you're not good enough. And that's so easy for us to do. It's so easy to be like, that person doesn't like me, or I'm going to compare myself to this physical therapist or this social media account or this instructor or whatever, this athlete. So that's okay, great, but nobody's saying that you're not good enough. You're saying that, right? So we got to find the evidence that you are good enough and that you can do it. And that just takes a lot of practice and it takes a lot of self-talk. And eventually you come on this side of things and then you start talking to other people about it. I never thought I would be the motivational speaker here. So I think those are sort of the main things that resonated with me in terms of these questions. I did have some questions about risk assessment before deciding to start your own business and tips on navigating the fear that goes along with entrepreneurship. I I don't know. I think that, of course, we go over this in the course. There's lots of risk assessment, but in terms of navigating that fear and deciding, like, you just have to go for it. And again, that is easier said than done. And I do think that that can be something that women are challenged by, right? So, I would like to sort of cap this discussion there and get your feedback on what you guys think, because I can talk about this forever and I know I'm running into your time. So I think food for thought here. So lots of positive self-talk and finding evidence that things are good, that you're good enough. And then also just looking across our social landscape and being honest with ourselves. Like, women do have a disadvantage still, and we can continue to raise the bar in terms of what we expect of ourselves. Okay, you guys, I hope you have a great weekend. And as I said, please leave some comments below and we're happy to continue this discussion. All right, talk soon. Bye-bye.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the PT on Ice Daily Show. If you enjoyed this content, head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. And be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at the Institute of Clinical Excellence. If you're interested in getting plugged into more ICE content on a weekly basis while earning CEUs from home, check out our virtual ICE online mentorship program at ptonice.com. While you're there, sign up for our Hump Day Hustling newsletter for a free email every Wednesday morning with our top 5 research articles and social media posts that we think are worth reading. Head over to ptonice.com and scroll to the bottom of the page to sign up.